All right, guys, welcome back to Stories Worth Telling. I'm Patrick Murakami, your host. We also have the amazing David Reyes here with us. He's a local pastor as well as a realtor. David, welcome, and thanks for being here with us today. We'll have the amazing David Reyes here with us. He's a local pastor. Oh, sorry. Yeah, I forgot to tell you to mute that. I apologize.
Sorry, one second.
No, you're fine.
There we go. How's that?
Yeah, that's perfect. It's a learning process for sure for all of us.
No, I'm really glad to be here, Patrick. Thanks so much for having me. Love you, love what you're doing. And man, we've only had a couple chats, but they've all been pretty good so far.
Yeah, no, I would agree. And, just from the first time that we met, I want to say October-ish, man, just to see the drive that you have, the passion that you have, and to be able to mix that all with your faith, I think those are all great qualities of leaders, and there's a reason why you're a team lead for, realtors. There's a reason why people show up every Sunday to hear you, talk about the word and showcase your faith and all those things. So, you're definitely been a great inspiration for me, somebody that I'd love to align myself with. And, I'm just excited for all the things that are, going to be happening with you and in all the different aspects.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. So I think I've been kind of in the business world long enough to understand that like realty and being a pastor, a lot of those things kind of go hand in hand, right? In terms of service, in terms of, the way you take care of people. Mm-hmm. But for some people, maybe who are not maybe kind of more immersed in either of those, they might be kind of scratching their head. So, tell us a little bit more about, how did you become a pastor? How did you become a realtor? And then how does that align?
That's a great question. For me, it's interesting because I never set out to get into the business world. From a pretty young age, probably high school years, my heartbeat has always been ministry. It's been serving people in their spiritual walk, helping them to grow. So much of my life has been changed and impacted by people that spoke into me, and to be able to kind of return that and do that for other people and help them take maybe the next step has always been a big thing for me. So I would say that the journey was a weird, roundabout, long journey for both of those. I actually, a long time ago, I told God, I said, I will never be a pastor. And I felt like at the time he kind of just laughed a little bit and was like, yeah, we'll see. So for us, I would say the journey really started. I met my wife at New Life Church here in town, and we really connected there. And I was helping to serve in the worship team for a small group there. And then we ended up getting married, and a couple of years later, we did a missions thing called the World Race, which is 11 countries in 11 months. And we did poverty relief work, and we did, we did witnessing, and we did working in orphanages and manual labor all over the place. And when we came back from that, I kind of bounced around a couple different jobs and finally landed at BombBomb, which is now a massive tech company down in Colorado Springs. I think if I'm not mistaken, I think I was their 12th, maybe their 13th hire.
Oh, wow.
When I started at BombBomb. And they decided at that time they wanted to focus on realtors and kind of making that their market base for growing their business. So they started taking us through real estate courses and exposing us to kind of the mindset of a broker model and how it all works. And at the time, my wife became pregnant with twins, and I'd been at the company about a year, and we financially were just tight. Mm-hmm. And so with 2 more babies on the way, I told them, guys, look, I love this job. I'd love to make it work. I need either a raise or a new position or something. And at the time, they just weren't able to accommodate, so I ended up launching into real estate after a lot of prayer and a lot of counsel with my wife and mentors and other people. I realized I had a passion for it in the sense of serving people. I don't like sales, and I can talk more about that later. But I do love helping people. I do love helping serve. And so I was in real estate over the last 5.5 years, and around the same time, we also had come back from that trip. We were looking for a spiritual community, and we found this small church plant called Keystone. And so, kind of neck and neck, as I was learning more about real estate at BombBomb, we were serving in this small church of, maybe 30, 40 people. and really found amazing community. For us, what it was just seeing genuineness and authenticity and care and concern for other people, for the people in our group. I mean, we'd been to a lot of churches, and we'd go to this one, and like we were just feeling things out. And my little daughter, she's like a year old, is crawling toward the stairs, and we're just feeling like we're disrupting this whole meeting.
Mm.
And one of the guys there, one of the leaders, just picked her up and held her, and he didn't look at us like, "Hey, take care of your kid." He didn't. He took responsibility and held her, and he was like, "You guys are good. You're fine." And it felt like real family. So. Yeah, and so that's been a long journey of us just pouring into that community and serving. And last October, we stepped in as the lead pastors. Both my wife and I do that as a team together. So.
I love that. Yeah, I didn't realize not being an entrepreneur until fairly recently. Just the difference of having the flexibility and the freedom to be able to be around your family more. Yeah. How closer you become. And I grew up in this mentality where my father raised three of us, and so a lot of times in my relationships I always felt like I needed time away, right? My way of saying it to my spouse was like, "Hey, I just need time to miss you," right? Yeah. But the reality of it was just that was kind of how I grew up. I kind of grew up, doing things on my own. And, my wife basically through persistence, through basically saying that, that's not how we're going to do things. Our family's going to be close, and you're going to be a part of that regardless if you want to or not, And so she's the type of person where we resolve issues sooner rather than later, because I, again, need my time to kind of fume or whatever. But, now it's like, we're close, and we're finding ways to be able to interact and work more and see each other more, and all those things. And it really has brought our family a lot closer. So I love the fact that you guys pastor together, and kudos to your wife for being able to have that ability to be able to step up to the pulpit, because traditionally a lot of women have gotten a lot of flack for that, and so it's not easy, so kudos to her and for you guys for being able to make that work. That's awesome.
Yeah. No, that was really important to me. And, even when we started at the church, we were elders for a while. And I told them when the lead pastor originally asked me to step in as an elder, I said, "Look, you want me and my wife, because if you get just me, you're only getting half of what I have to bring. She's literally my other half. I'm not a whole without her. And if you want the full measure of wisdom, she tempers everything that I have, and she brings a whole other level of perspective and insight that I just don't have." And so I think there's a lot of churches that have had, if you look at the senior pastor in kind of a father role, we've had a lot of single father churches. And I think that families, really will benefit when you see both role models able to express themselves and bring leadership and bring their life to the group. And so I'm all for seeing more spiritual mothers, more women in that form of leadership.
I love that. Yeah. And you're right. And it's crazy, right? Because a lot of mothers typically are the ones that lead families to the church, right? Because they have that nature, and the nurturing side. But statistically, fathers typically, if they're the ones that lead their families to the church, has a much higher retention rate of families staying in the church, staying together, and things like that. Mm-hmm. So I love the fact that that you recognize that there's a huge balance that needs to be part. And it's kind of like that love triangle, right? The closer you grow in your faith, the closer you grow in each other as well. So it's incredible that you guys are taking that on together. I really respect that. For those of you who are watching and tuning in, if you could just let us know if you're watching this live or if you're catching this on a replay. So just type in hashtag live. If you're watching it live right now, feel free to post up any questions and comments. And then hashtag replay if you're just catching this on the replay end. But again, we just kind of like to know and kind of gauge with, where people are at in the videos, how they're watching this, to give us a better understanding of how we can be more engaging with you. And a lot of these questions, guys, a lot of these interviews are so that way we have the ability to really get the opportunity to get to know these entrepreneurs, these business owners, these leaders in our community here in Colorado Springs specifically. And from the moment that I met David, he just has such a caring personality, a caring heart, and you could just tell that he has a heart for wanting to help people. And one of the events that he had hosted was basically kind of aligned with one of the things that I had kind of started not too long ago, which was a Christian business leaders Facebook group. And the whole reason why David came up was because a mutual friend, Doug Brown, had mentioned that David had a similar event, prior to that. And so definitely something that we want to experience and be able to kind of grow and support each other and, have that collaboration over competition type mentality.
Really.
Yeah. So, I saw recently that you made this transition to take your team to eXp Realty. I've actually had the pleasure of being able to sit in on one of those, as I kind of have mulled over the idea of becoming a realtor. And I love kind of the business model of, being able to have a piece of ownership in regards to that as well. So tell us about kind of that transition for you, to what ultimately made you decide to move your team over to eXp.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. It was really an interesting decision because the brokerage I left, I think a lot of people end up leaving brokerages because of dissatisfaction, because of maybe problems or just not getting what they feel like they need. And this wasn't that kind of scenario. I actually ended up leaving, I think, one of the best brokerages I've ever seen, which was the Cutting Edge Realtors. They're phenomenal. But what was really interesting to me was the eXp model, especially in this day and age when you look at everything we're having to do right now.
Sure.
Is all virtual. It's all offsite. It's all, and their whole brokerage is based on that. So they've got this online virtual world that you can do trainings. You don't have to physically go. And so the interesting thing is they didn't have to reformat anything during this crisis. They already had the platform in place. But like you said, the idea that agents can have equity in the company, the idea that there's the ability to network and connect with agents all over the nation, which I have some wonderful relationships with friends who are agents all over the place. And so it's kind of an exciting new endeavor that I'm really looking forward to finding out how we can pour into teams and grow a strong network of realtors and entrepreneurs and take everybody's business to the next level.
Definitely. And what I enjoyed, I think, from that aspect was also because there's so many realtors here in Colorado Springs specifically, right? I think 4,700, 4,800, something like that.
Yeah, it's wild.
And, we know traditionally that the first 2 years are always going to be the hardest. A lot of them, even as crazy as the market has been, maybe 1 to 2 homes is kind of the typical average, so the fact that, somebody who may be starting, maybe they don't have kind of maybe their feet steady yet in that, but they still are out there networking and, can maybe bring in some of these other people who, can do that. And then that they're still able to kind of maybe find a way to still make a living and still earn some income and stuff like that when they're still trying to fine tune some of their other skills. I really liked that model in terms of being able to help support your team through that.
That's honestly one of my favorite things. I think the 2 kinds of agents that I'm really looking forward to working more with are people in that scenario who've only been able to kind of sell a couple homes a year and really want to take it up to the next notch. When I started, I was blessed to have amazing mentors and leaders that taught me how to do it well. And so I wound up having 12 closings my first year, and it's more than doubled since then. But to be able to teach other people how to do that, because not everybody has that kind of resource. But then the other kind of agent I really love is the ones that see it's not just about real estate. I love my job. I love real estate. But for me, everything I do, whether it's in business or ministry, is about building a legacy. It's about having a positive impact on the people around me. It's about making our city better. So that when people get into that level of thinking, where it's not just what's my daily grind and how do I make my next paycheck, but how do I leave something better than I found it, that
Mm,
level of thinking really starts to drive me.
absolutely, yeah, and I think that you touched base on the key points there. I think mentorship is often overlooked.
Yeah.
So I've been doing a lot more kind of teaching in regards to the basis of mentorship, why it's so important, how it evolves,
Mhm.
and how it continuously gives back, whether you're on the receiving end or on the teaching end.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of one of the I feel like it's one of God's greatest gifts that we've kind of gone away from, or that
Mhm.
we haven't necessarily fully unlocked the full potential of it. So I love the fact that you touch base and you talk about that with all the things in terms of business, and that you're keeping that legacy of your mentors alive also
Yeah.
by
Yeah.
acknowledging what they've done for you. um and then to kind of touch base on that, so how has the mentorship, how has your faith, how does that help you lead a team? Because I've had many interactions with many realtors. I think we're up to like 100 and 125 almost
Wow.
since July of last year. And a lot of people, I've heard, oh, I was on the team, or I had a team, and I'll never do it again, or things like that. So
Are you are you hearing that from leaders or from the people that were on the team?
both ends actually. I've had some
Okay.
people say, I had some people on my team, and I just, I'll never do it again. I had some people that were like, I was with somebody for a long time, they got me into everything, but when I was looking for the real help that I needed, they didn't want me to evolve into the next step. They just assumed that I would be kind of working under this person and kind of doing it their way for a long time. And
Right.
obviously there's a lot of different ways to be able to learn and grow, and part of it is rolling with the punches, and part of it is also willing to kind of have those ebbs and flows, and basically kind of sometimes give away some of that rain, which is kind of maybe hard to do sometimes. So what talk about a little bit about how does that work for you, and the dynamic of you and your team, and because I think for a lot of people it may be difficult, and what does that look like when you're searching for to join a team? What are some of the qualities that people should be looking for?
Oh yeah. Yeah. Some really good questions there. I mean, I guess the easiest way for me to start with that is my journey, which is when I started in real estate, I chose to do a mentorship program. It took 2 years. And an agent in town named Brandon Smith was my mentor, and he was phenomenal. And what I was able to learn from him, I honestly feel like I got probably 5 years of real estate insight and experience crammed into me in a matter of 12 to 18 months.
Wow.
And it was a very high bar to hit. I mean, every contract was analyzed, every interaction with clients. And it really, what was great about it was, I think the first thing you have to make a successful team is teachability.
Hmm.
You have to be willing to grow. You have to not sit there and feel arrows of offense and woundedness because somebody just told you could do something better. And I think that's something I really tried to bring to the table in my approach. But I found it also, it's important for a team leader to have that mentality as well. Someone leading a team, it's very possible that even a new agent may have ideas or ways of doing things that put a spin on it and make it better. And so I think there's a give and take there that I found was given to me. I was able to give input and learn to do things a little bit uniquely and find the ways and patterns that worked for me. But I was also able to receive and say, I'm going to do it your way. I'm going to, I almost think of it like, again, I'm going to go biblical here, but the story of Jacob, he served another man's field. Like the guy was
Hmm.
a shepherd, and Jacob took care of someone else's sheep before he was given his own sheep to take care
Sure.
of.
Sure.
And in the same way, I think when we look at trying to grow a successful business or a successful team, why start from scratch? Why try to rebuild everything from the ground up if somebody has created a successful model? So that's what I learned and was imparted to me. And so when I look at building my teams, I've been really focused on how do I pass on what was a positive experience for me, what made me feel empowered, what helped me to actually learn what I needed to learn instead of what I thought I needed to learn. There were with real estate and any business, there's so many things to think about. And honestly, so many of them become distractions to the things you really should be giving your attention to. And probably my favorite part of leading teams, though, is hearing what people want to accomplish. I have a guy working with me right now. We've been together now over a year. He's been on my team, and he's phenomenal. And he's told me from the beginning, I want to do my own thing. I want to create my own, possibly create my own brokerage or leave and be on my own team. And my response, instead of saying, well, I know you're going to leave me, so you're not worth it,
Right.
was to say, that's awesome. I'm going to love being with you as long as you choose to be here. And my goal is to help you achieve your goal and to do it with excellence. And so, so really that's what I love about leading and being a part of a team. And honestly, I'll say my last broker, Gary Martinez, I don't know that I would have started a team without his encouragement. I don't know that I would have recognized that I was capable of it.
Sure.
So his willingness to really kind of push me that direction kind of opened my eyes to the fact that this is actually what is the biggest part that's inside of me, of pouring into people in that way. And I had what it took to do it. So it kind of took someone pushing me out of the nest a little bit to make it happen.
Sure, certainly. And man, I think that's incredible. The fact that, again, that willingness to mentor, to learn, to have that growth mindset. Because I think a lot of times what you'll see is that, again, it's that competition type environment. And again, yeah, you can blame social media for a lot of it. You can blame kind of maybe your upbringings for it and stuff like that. But I think ultimately at the end of the day, it's a choice.
It is a choice.
And, you get to the point where, I understand people have to eat, but it's with so many other realtors, that are out there, a lot of them would just say, well, hey, if you're not looking to maybe join the team, maybe this is not a good fit for you. Whereas you basically kind of have that mindset. And I think that this is where a lot of maybe entrepreneurs fail from the get-go, is that they just assume whatever business that they start is maybe their marriage, right? And that they're going to be tied to that type of business forever. And it's really difficult. I mean, obviously you want to be passionate, you want to put everything you have into it, but with the understanding that, there are going to be those ups and downs and those ebbs and flows, and you have to roll with the punches and stuff like that. But, I think one of the great things about life is just, no matter how odd how stacked the odds are against you, no matter how bad things are, you have the ability to recover.
Yeah.
Right. And so maybe a realtor, or somebody's looking to get into that, maybe they won't know that it's not for them if they don't try it. Right. Mm-hmm. Maybe they got talked into it because they saw, whatever was appealing to them during that time, whatever they're going through. But the few that are able to stick through, the ones that are going to be persistent, obviously we know that the numbers and the results are always going to be yielding. It's just a matter of if you can kind of deal with some rejection for early on and kind of maybe, stick with some of those things. And so, obviously I spend a lot of time with the realtors trying to understand and learn kind of the role, so that way I can be a better advocate, so I can turn around and help realtors close more homes, or help them, go back to some of the resources that they haven't been able to maybe think about because they're so focused on those other things. But the fact that you were willing to say, hey, you know what, even if this is a temporary period of time, I still will gain value and experience by having you here for the short amount of time that you're here. I hope that you will also, feel the same. And so that mentality definitely, I think, automatically makes you, a great leader in my book because of that willingness, you know what I mean? And that, to be able to kind of come down and say, you know what, we're looking for that longevity together. We're looking for a relationship with you, whether you're here or somewhere else, you know. How receptive was your team when you decided to kind of go through and make that switch? I mean, was that a group decision? Did anybody end up falling out because of that?
Yeah, no, it was a group decision. I had a lot of long conversations with them, answering questions, hashing it out. And honestly, it didn't take much. I mean, when we all looked at the model, it just made so much sense with I think there's some uniquenesses to the way that we do things and to some of the resources that we have access to that make it, in some ways, just kind of a no-brainer.
Sure. Okay.
But it was interesting because I didn't know this, but my team member, someone actually was trying to recruit him to another brokerage. They were offering to pay him a pretty good sum to move over to their brokerage.
Oh,
And
wow.
he told them, no, I'm not going anywhere, because of the trust and the relationship that we've built. So that, man, that I think I cried when he told me that.
Yeah, I mean, it's,
That feels good.
yeah, no, that's great. I mean, and it further emphasizes that maybe you're on the right path, that you're building those key, strong relationships, and it's not maybe an instant, gratuitous thing that, they understand the value of what you bring and what you're providing. So I think that says a lot. Those of you who are tuning in live, thank you guys so much for being here. I got my wife Sharon, she's tuning in.
Sharon.
Nick Junes, good to see you, man. I know that he's a young guy living in Seattle, and he's kind of finding his way and paving his own, forging his own path in terms of maybe the entrepreneur world, and does some things like magic shows. So really good to see him here tuning in. Jared, we've got him. He's a really talented artist, and Lauren Chesmore tuning in live as well. So thank you guys so much for being here. I don't know if I missed any other comments here, but if I did, welcome, guys. Sorry, having to toggle back for us. I don't necessarily see them as they come up here, but definitely glad that you guys are tuning in here with David Reyes. Yeah, so thank you so much for the insight in regards to what that looks like. I know oftentimes, again, sometimes feelings get hurt. Maybe some people, they have developed, maybe a sense of loyalty to, where they're with, or maybe other friendships and stuff like that. But it sounds like that you guys have a really strong knit and close team, which is pretty incredible, honestly, in the type of business that you're involved in, So really happy to see that. Guys, I do have the link up here if you want to check out David Reyes' EXP Realty team. So you go to the facebook.com/Reyes Team COS for Colorado Springs. And of course, the website and the phone number. And then I'm going to switch these banners here over to kind of the Keystone Church, and we'll talk a little bit about that. So I was listening to one of the most recent uploads you had on there, and it was pretty incredible. I mean, I love the fact that you're just yourself and you are able to relate so many depths. I think the one I was listening to was on faith, and there was a Superman reference, there was a Star Wars reference, there was one about puppies, and dogs, and I'm sitting there thinking, I'm like, man, it felt like having a conversation. It wasn't just you preaching the word, but it was so in depth, right? And it was relatable. And so I really was tuned in, being able to listen to that. I think you guys have set up through the podcast is the way that I was listening to it. Mm-hmm. But, your approach, your style of preaching and stuff like that. I know for those who are really big into church or who have ever tried to do maybe a presentation or doing a church, I know that that's a big process in itself, having been a youth pastor for a little bit of period of time, and the preparation and all that stuff. So how do you find the time? And what does that look like for you, as you're going into the week and kind of putting together these sermons?
Oh, that's a good question. It's interesting because I do my quiet times in the morning typically, and I'll wake up and I read a couple devotionals and spend some time in prayer. And I've gotten into baths lately. I don't know if anybody else is that way, but I never liked that. But that's been my new quiet time space. I'll hop in the bath, pop on an audio Bible, and just listen. And usually I just get a couple nuggets that come out of it, and I'll pop them into my little notebook, and then you develop them over time. So that's where a lot of kind of the messages that I get come and flow from. But I think the other piece is I'm always trying to look at where our people are in our church and where our city is, and what do people need. So I'm listening and I'm looking for like where is it that God is trying to get through to them or to speak to them or to bring life or encouragement or hope. and where can I partner with him in that? And so a lot of what I talk about flows from kind of where I'm feeling like our people are, or it's either something that's powerfully in me that helps me, or that I feel like I need to put out there, or something I see in them that I really want to try to help and encourage and lift up. So
Nice. I love that. Um, with being a pastor, with kind of being a team lead for realtor and things like that, like, do you feel like do you feel like that you have maybe more expectations, more pressure, so to speak, because you have those titles, because you're kind of maybe a mentor or a teacher position more so than maybe some of the others, and things like that. So do you feel like you have that pressure having that faith, especially with the title of being a pastor?
um and when you say that pressure, do you mean pressure like that I've been putting on myself, or that I perceive from other people?
I think that maybe the perception from other people, so do you feel like that when they find out that you're a pastor, some people I think will automatically gravitate and they're like, oh, that's so awesome. He's working off his faith in so many other ways. And some people are like, oh man, that's got to be a lot because now you have to watch everything that you do even more so because you're a pastor. You know what I
No,
mean? So
no,
stuff like
there's definitely some of that. There's some people that are like, oh, I better not cuss around him now. No, that has been a little bit interesting. I would say that I don't personally feel the pressure because um, I'm not trying to prove myself to anybody or put off a certain appearance or facade. I'm pretty much me. Um, Being a pastor doesn't make you any more perfect or holy than anyone else. It just means that I love the responsibility of bringing life to people in a spiritual community.
right.
So yeah, there have been some people that it's interesting when we first meet. I've had some of those things, but as people get to know me, they realize that I'm not watching their every move. I'm not looking at them waiting to go, oh, I don't have expectations on other people. I think one of the problems with Christianity in general that we've experienced in the last couple decades is this tendency for judgmentalism, this tendency
Mm,
for what I would say would be a very critical spirit. And I think, if we look in the Bible, what I believe is the Bible says that God's the one that's supposed to convict us. The Holy Spirit convicts us of sin. He's the one that points out, here's where you need to grow. God knows that. I don't know that. It's not my business to point in somebody else's heart and go, that's where you need to grow.
mm,
Now, unless they ask me to. Now, if someone says, hey, I want you to speak into my life, if you see something that's a problem, please tell me. I will walk with you. Absolutely. I'm not going to criticize you, but I'm going to help you grow where we can help you grow. But if that's not invited, that kind of relational equity is earned, and I think it's an abuse of our spiritual power to try to assume that we can manipulate people around us into a certain way of living. And I don't think that's what God is actually looking for. I think He's looking for, you know, the Bible says His kindness leads us to repentance, and so when we live in the kindness of Christ, that's representing how Jesus drove people to the foot of God by kindness, not by criticism.
sure. Um, I think oftentimes, again, maybe we've been exposed to, maybe we've seen, maybe we've been experienced a lot of those things firsthand directly, right? So for somebody, and there's a lot of them, right? And people who have maybe been burned by, um, I don't want to necessarily say the church, but it could have been the church, could have been the people in the church, which
No,
ultimately is the church, right? The people.
no.
But, so somebody who maybe they're struggling with, the idea of maybe going to a church or going to, kind of maybe resubmitting their faith, and those things. What are some encouraging words or some ways that you might basically, approach that to somebody else? What does that look like for you? And I'm sure that you've probably dealt with some of that quite a bit over the past couple of years.
Yeah. I mean, my wife and I have been very close to church scandals, to abusive leadership, to all kinds of things. So, I mean, I think the first thing that I would say is to validate the pain. I think it's real. I think that people that have been wounded by spiritual leadership or by the church, I think it's important for them to know that it's real, that it happens, that it happened, and I also think it's important to recognize that just because it happened and it happened in that circumstance doesn't necessarily mean that it's a reflection of who God is.
Mm,
And I think it's a very sad thing, but I think there are times, many times, where churches don't accurately reflect who God is. And that's not all churches. And again, I think the problem with any wound is the wound is valid, it's legitimate, it often comes from a real place. The problem is when we try to take that wound and apply it to any circumstance that is related to it
mm,
just because we've been hurt and we don't feel safe. And I think the challenge for all of us is to recognize where the wound is and where it came from and where to direct our pain, but also to recognize where God might want to help relieve that and take that away and renew trust that it doesn't have to stay broken. And so, I mean, my wife and I, we've been through many journeys of looking at who He is and believing in that more than we believe that the pain that's been caused by other people, and also recognizing there's poor leaders, there's poor judgment, there's flawed human beings everywhere. So anytime you put a spiritual leader on a pedestal, you're setting yourself up to be disappointed.
mm.
Um, but at the same time, to recognize there are people that are legitimate, wonderful leaders that are, when we honor them and recognize who they are and receive from them, we can grow. Just don't expect them to be perfect. It's about, you know.
Certainly, yeah, and I think that you see that a lot, right? Maybe I don't want to say untouchable, but maybe unreachable at times, because of that, or maybe there's a certain stigma, that comes with it. So I think that what I love is that you have this humbleness and this humility that basically says, I'm human. I work just like you do. I talk to God, and I struggle just as much as you do. As a human being, and oftentimes I don't think we hear that message maybe often enough, right? Especially after maybe somebody's gone through the hurt and they feel like that, they just walk away rather than maybe having that comfort level to be able to where they can come in and comfortably say, "Hey, I experienced this. How can we work through that?" And so I love the fact that you're kind of walking that line that basically tells people like it's okay, don't have these expectations of these people, right? Just because they have a certain title or a certain word, you know, sure that they've earned that title, they've gone to schooling, they've all have all those things, but at the end of the day, they're still human beings. They're just like you and I,
Yeah.
so I love the fact that you're just putting us kind of back all on even ground. And I think that that will definitely resonate with a lot of people, especially people who are going to be searching, you know, because I think so many of us and so many people have been hurt, but ultimately they have unanswered questions, so cool. Um, what got you into the idea of kind of doing the podcasts for the church and stuff like that?
We it's just another way for us to kind of reach people. We actually have a lot of people who are connected to our church who live really all around the world. We've got people in Spain, we've got people in Puerto Rico, we've got people in Indiana and some other states. And so,
Wow.
so it's just another way for us to kind of keep connected with them and let them know what's going on and be a part of our community.
Okay. Awesome. And are there any events going on either through the realtor, through your guys' team, or through the church? Does the church have any kind of ongoing events? I know with the COVID stuff, a lot of this stuff may be online and stuff like that, but what are some ways that people who are tuning in can get plugged into to help with the church? What kind of missions and things like that do you guys have?
Yeah. I would say easiest way is to join us on Sundays and just hop on. We do a Zoom, and so we keep it a little bit more interactive. It's not live streamed, unlike a lot of churches, not because we think there's anything wrong with that, but it kind of preserves a little bit of the privacy as people want to have some conversations. But again, if anybody wanted to join us and you don't want to talk, you just turn your camera off and you can sit there and listen, and we're great with that. Our heart is, it's not the David show, it's not the Catherine show. It's really, we want to hear and be ministered to by what God is doing in all of us. So I may have a message to share, but at the end of the day, we're all part of a body and we're all bringing life to each other. So that's kind of how we operate.
It's pretty incredible. So kind of like an interactive church service on Zoom.
Yeah, absolutely.
I love that. I think that right there resonates with so many people, just, hey, if I could really, because how many times do we feel like that the message was specifically for us, but we can't turn around and share that or tell somebody, and the people that we do tell are probably our friends and family, and they're like, oh, that's really great, honey. Anyway, what do you want to eat for lunch, right? So I love the fact that, if you're experiencing that, that you can turn around and just let people know right then and there. And, one of the things that we should be celebrating is just the ability for people to openly walk in their faith. I think that's something that's kind of been subsidized for a long time, with so many other different things politically and, with media presence and all that stuff. So I really love the fact that you guys are focusing more on those intimate relationships with the ones that you have, and that it's not, I don't want to say a show.
Yeah.
But, I think oftentimes maybe it's, sometimes it's always about the growth in the numbers, and again, I don't think that's the true intent for it, a lot of it, but a lot of times that happens. So
yeah, I think you're right. And I think, obviously we want to grow, because growing, any healthy organism, any healthy thing grows, whether it's a business or a family or, there's growth. But at the same time, our heartbeat really is that we look at it like a family. We look at it like we're all taking care of each other. We're part of something together that's bigger than just whoever's in charge.
Right.
And, it's been fun. We even did, again, stuff that I don't know that we would have done without the unexpected blessing of this virus. But we did a couple weeks ago for our church service, instead of just doing a normal service, we did a workshop on hearing God's voice. And we just did some exercises, and people that maybe have never heard him before, all of a sudden are actually hearing God's voice and engaging with each other in that way and sharing life. And so it was a cool experience.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's pretty incredible when you get to see the growth in your people, kind of like, like as a parent, when you see your kids, it's kind of the same feeling, and to know that God is working in them, and to actually see that growth real time. Oftentimes we want the immediate results, and when you get a chance to see it, it's really exciting.
Yeah.
One of the questions that we've been asking, and I think that you've kind of already answered it here, and it basically talks about there is no limitations such as time, money, etc. What would you want to do? And I think that you kind of already do that. But is there anything else that maybe you would want, or anything else that you would like to try and maybe experience?
I want to see our city come back to life.
Elaborate a little bit more on that.
Yeah. I think when I look at Colorado Springs, here's the interesting thing. When I first moved here, I did not like it here. I came from Grand Rapids, Michigan, and I was used to like 4 very clear-cut seasons, and I loved it there. And moving here, I was like, man, it just feels so exposed. It feels so weird. But over the last, that was 2001. So over the last 19 years, man, my love for this city has just bloomed, and I wouldn't want to be anywhere else in the world right now. And yet, when I look at our city, I feel like what I've seen since I moved here to today is I feel like there's a lot of hope that's been lost in our city.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like there's a lot of trust. There's a lot of innocence that has been lost in our city. And that saddens me, because I believe that God has greater things for Colorado Springs. So, I think there's a growing up phase, where it's natural that things start to look different when you're a teenager versus when you're a kid. And in some ways, I almost look at us kind of going through some of that as a city. But at the same time, I think, we hear about suicide and we hear about depression and we hear about some of the things that people are struggling through in our city. Some of our amazing military servicemen and women who come back and don't really have the support that they need a lot of times to make it. And so if I could say there's one thing I want to do with that, if there were no resources or limits, it would be to be a part of seeing this city come back to life, of seeing a renewal of hope, a renewal of innocence and trust and relational connection. I think there's a culture of a city that can grow and be changed and be shifted. And I love our city's culture. I think there's some things I've never seen anywhere else. The way that businesses collaborate together, the way that some of the most amazing coffee shops, support each other. They send around, what is it? Locals had a disloyal card where you put it around and you get punches for going to other people's coffee shops. I mean, I love that about our city.
Yeah, it's incredible. Unlike anywhere else, right? The only other place that I've seen that loves their small and local as much as us is probably Seattle. But it's still not quite the same. I mean, their small and local shops are going to be kind of more of like a lot of the arts and a lot of like the fish markets and things like that, and I say that, and of course, like Starbucks was started from there, right? But I mean, but I mean, it's, if you go to the original one, it still feels very mom and pop, I do love the fact that no matter how big this city grows, no matter how many call centers and big businesses we come in, that we still love and support our small and local businesses there. So, and then last question that I have here today is, actually two more, I'm sorry. So the first one is, what is something that maybe people who don't know you or people who only know you a little bit, what is something that, what are some keywords if you were doing an SEO or a keyword search on David Reyes? What would be some of those words that you would put out there for you?
Oh gosh,
I'm going to put one in there for sure for humility and humble.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I couldn't put that one because then it
does. Yeah, right.
Gosh, I would probably say vision, authenticity, empathy, compassion, hope, encouragement.
Man, I love it. Yeah, I think if we were to look up David Reyes, for sure, that would be the words that I would associate with you as well, man. And last question for you is just any of these entrepreneurs, anybody that's watching this, people that are really just yearning for something different, whether it be in business, whether it be with their income, with personal life, just on a general scale, general level, what are some things that if they're sitting in front of you, what are some of those words that and what's something that some advice that you would give them?
I think two pieces that I would give. First is, you don't have to do it alone. I think probably the biggest mistake that entrepreneurs make is reinventing the wheel. I think we've got, especially anybody who's an entrepreneur is an idea generator. Like, you've got things blowing up left and right. Oh, what about this? What about that? My wife knows, man, I've had some more ideas I share with her, and she gets the deer in the headlights look, and I have to like reassure her, it doesn't mean I'm going to do it. I'm just,
right.
I know better now.
Yes.
When I was young, I was like, I'll do it all. But I would say you don't have to do it alone. Don't reinvent the wheel. Connect with people. Collaborate. It's always going to change the nature of your vision to invite somebody else into it. But it might also be the thing that kickstarts it and actually makes it successful. So I have found incredible success and blessing in being able to invite other people into my visions, to speak into them, to feed into them, to make them successful. So I would say that's something that I have a passion for doing for other people. So So one piece would be just to say, don't do it alone. If you need someone to talk to, Patrick's phenomenal. He will put you on the right track. I love connecting with people that want to just take their vision to the next level. And then I think the second thing I would say is don't be afraid of success.
Yes, that's a hard one because a lot of us have been trained to just work
Yep.
hard and work that ladder. But, when you don't know maybe how good you are or how great you are at something, it's a little unnerving to realize that, like, wow, I'm actually pretty decent at this. Or and every entrepreneur goes through that. You get to that point where you're like, I can actually do this for a living.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's like, how do I take this to the next level? And then you become kind of re-afraid again,
Yeah.
So that's amazing advice. I'm glad that you said that, and to kind of further emphasize about not having to do it alone, are you familiar with the book Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think almost every entrepreneur, if they haven't, you definitely should read it. But there's a chapter in there where it talks about one of the guys, basically, he knew that he would be so successful if he could just work with Thomas Edison. And it wasn't so much that, he wanted to go off of Thomas Edison's ideas. It's just that he knew that he could sell them way better. And he didn't have to reinvent the wheel. He didn't have to come up with the ideas, but he just needed to get in touch with Thomas Edison. And the first time he did, he completely failed. And he worked for the same company, and basically his lifelong goal at that point was, I'm going to get a second chance to work with Edison, and it's going to work. And he finally did. And I forget, I don't know if it was the phone or the sonogram or whatever it was that he was selling, but it got to the point where the title became Made by Edison, Sold by, whatever his name was, and that became the slogan. And so they basically end up netting like $5 million in sales or something like that, which back then was crazy money. Yeah. So again, I think that's a super valid point, that you don't have to necessarily be the person that can have all the ideas. You can be the person that can execute. Yeah. and be equally successful, or if not maybe more successful, so there's a lot of different ways that business and entrepreneurialism works. Guys, again, for those of you who have tuned in, again, thank you so much for sticking with us here with this time frame that we had with David Reyes. David, I can't thank you enough for being here. Thank you so much for sharing the heartbeat and sharing your story. And it's an incredible journey. I'm really glad to be a part of your journey and you be a part of mine. And definitely looking forward to some of the collaborations. Guys, some of you may be watching on Facebook, so you don't have the YouTube link. I'll definitely post it in the channel, so that way you can go and click into the YouTube. We ask that you basically subscribe, share it if you know anybody else that could benefit from David's message. And basically, we want to build this network of small and local businesses and help support each other and help grow one another. And David's definitely a great mentor and a great teacher, and somebody who has a heart for people and that's willing to be able to listen. So, those of you who may not have had an interaction with him before this, definitely feel free to reach out. He's definitely open to connecting. And I think that's one of the greatest reasons as to why he has been so successful. And any last messages or anything that you would like to go ahead and let people know, David?
Keep your hope alive. We don't know what's coming down the pike, but I think we're, as cheesy as the message is, I think it's true. We're all in this together. So let's keep talking to each other, share your needs. Let's support each other. If you know about businesses that need help or yours needs help, put it out there so that we can continue to share that and make sure we all get through this together.
Definitely. And any entrepreneurs watching, basically, if you have, I firmly believe that everybody has a story worth telling, and you want to get in on the videos, and you want us to do an interview, feel free to reach out. This is not basically picking and choosing of who's worthy, who isn't, because everybody has an amazing story. And if you're ready to tell it and you just want another platform to do so, feel free to reach out. Thank you guys so much for your time. And tomorrow we will be live at 1:00 with Denise DeFilippo. She is amazing. She has an incredible heart as a mortgage lender,
Yeah.
and you guys will definitely be excited for that. So we'll tune in tomorrow at 1 o'clock. Thank you guys so much. Have a good day.